Du Huanjie had survived bullets, prosecutors, betrayal, a car bomb, and 5 years inside a body that no longer obeyed him from the waist down. But nothing humiliated him like the empty ballroom. The Seorim Grand Hotel had prepared for 300 guests, 300 silk-covered chairs, 300 crystal water glasses, 300 gold-rimmed plates waiting beneath silver domes, 300 folded napkins shaped like small white birds, arranged by staff who had practiced the table layout twice because the retirement gala belonged to Du Huanjie, the former king of Jeju's private shipping corridors and the man whose name once made ministers return phone calls before the second ring. The ballroom was magnificent. Towering crystal chandeliers spilled warm gold light across polished marble floors. Tall floral arrangements climbed from the tables in white orchids, cream roses, and pale green vines. A string quartet waited near the stage, their instruments resting in laps that had grown stiff with awkward patience. Behind the podium stood a framed retirement plaque still covered in black velvet. The banner above the stage read, "Honoring Chairman Du Huanjie, a legacy of power, vision, and service." Power had come. Vision had been arranged. Service stood near the walls in white gloves, pretending not to notice that no one else had arrived. Huanjie sat at the center of the ballroom in his state-of-the-art black wheelchair, dressed in a custom Italian tuxedo cut so well it made pity look badly dressed. His silver-streaked hair was combed back. His face, devastatingly handsome even in age, remained controlled. Only his right hand betrayed him. It rested on the unopened retirement plaque, fingers lightly touching the velvet cover as if the thing beneath it might still matter if someone eventually came to unveil it. At 7 o'clock, he had told himself Jeju traffic delayed them. At 7:30, he had told himself politicians preferred dramatic entrances. At 8, he had stopped making excuses for people who had spent 20 years accepting his protection, his money, his favors, his silence, and his dangerous friendship. By 8:20, the truth sat in every empty chair. Nobody was coming. Not Assemblyman Ku Dae-chan, whose career had survived because Huanjie made a scandal disappear before it learned to breathe. Not the hotel magnates who had begged for his shipping routes. Not the celebrities who once drank champagne on his yacht and called him chairman, with both hands wrapped around his generosity. Not the cousins who had borrowed his name. Not the executives who had built their careers inside Maruk Astor Group. Not even most of his family. Only his nephew stood nearby. Du Seongak wore a midnight blue tuxedo and sympathies so polished it looked rehearsed. He checked his watch, sighed softly, and stepped closer to Huanjie's wheelchair. "Uncle," he said, "perhaps we should end the program quietly." Huanjie did not look at him. The musicians had stopped playing 15 minutes earlier. Their silence filled the room more honestly than the violins had. Seongak lowered his voice. "Public association is complicated right now. People are cautious. You understand how the world works." Huanjie understood perfectly. The world loved power when it could still move quickly. When he walked into rooms on his own legs, men stood before he reached the table. When he controlled port access, they sent fruit baskets, private notes, daughters' wedding invitations, hospital requests, campaign pleas. When his enemies feared him, his friends multiplied. Then the car bomb came. 5 years ago, beneath a rain-darkened overpass near Siaguapo, a black sedan had become fire, glass, and metal. Huanjie survived. His spine did not forgive him for it. At first, people still came. Carefully. Publicly. With flowers large enough to be photographed. Then fewer came. Then they sent assistance. Then messages. Then silence. And now, on the night arranged to celebrate his retirement, the room showed him what their loyalty had always been worth. Hotel staff began clearing the farthest tables. Quietly. As if removing untouched meals could be done without sound if one was polite enough. Huanjie watched a young server lift a full plate of sea bass beneath a silver dome. The food had never been tasted. The chair had never been pulled back. The wine had never been poured. Something inside his chest folded inward. He had expected betrayal from rivals. He had not expected abandonment to be so well lit.
Seongat lianet gloser.
Let them clear, uncle. The longer this sits, the worse it looks. Huanjie finally turned his head. Worse for whom?
Seon got pauset.
Before he could answer, the ballroom doors opened. Every staff member looked up. Hwan Jae did too. No entourage entered.
No politician. No billionaire.
No camera crew. A woman stepped inside wearing a simple beige coat over a neat hotel housekeeping uniform. She was black, beautiful, composed, in her late 40s, with radiant caramel brown skin, full natural curls gathered away from her face, and the kind of dignity that did not require expensive fabric to be seen. In one hand, she carried a small bakery cake wrapped with a ribbon. In the other, a homemade retirement card. Beside her walked a young man of about 24, smartly dressed in a navy blazer and trousers, holding a modest gift bag. He looked nervous, but he smiled anyway. The staff froze.
Seon got frowned.
The woman stopped several feet from Hwan Jae, then bowed. Not too deeply. Not like staff before power. Like one human being greeting another. "Chairman Du," she said softly, "you may not remember us." Hwan Jae stared at her. The room, empty until now, seemed to hold its breath. The woman lifted the small card. "But we remembered you." Her son stepped forward and bowed too. Hwan Jae's hand tightened on the armrest of his wheelchair. Something about the young man's face. Something about the woman's voice. A memory moved near him, but would not yet come close enough to name. Seon-gak stepped in. "This is a private family event." The woman looked across the empty ballroom, at the untouched chairs, the cleared plates, the silent musicians, the gold room prepared for people who had not cared enough to come. Then she looked back at Seon-gak. "Then it is strange," she said, "that family did not come." A server covered her mouth. Hwan Jae lowered his head. Not to hide anger. To hide the first almost smile the night had given him. The woman approached and placed the small cake and homemade card on the table beside the unopened retirement plaque. "We did not want you to retire," she said, with no one saying thank you. And for the first time that evening, Du Hwan Jae looked at one chair in the entire ballroom and knew it was not empty. 22 years earlier, Esi Dankwa had cleaned luxury rooms she could not afford to dream inside. She worked nights at the old Seorim Coastal Hotel before it became the five-star palace it was now. Back then, it had brass elevators that smelled faintly of lemon polish, carpets that had spilled secrets, and rich guests who treated invisible workers as part of the furniture. Esi was 26, Ghanaian-born, and exhausted in a way youth was not supposed to be. Her son, Kojo, was 2 years old and sick. Not fever-sick. Not the kind of sickness a mother could fight with soup, prayer, and sleep. His heart needed surgery. The doctors had explained it kindly. That was almost worse. Kindness made impossible things sound reasonable before handing you a bill. Esi worked every shift she could. Hotel rooms at night. Laundry sorting at dawn. Occasional translation help for foreign guests when the front desk remembered she spoke English better than half the managers. She slept in pieces and ate whatever Kojo left unfinished. Still, the numbers did not move. Hospital debt grew like mold. Hope became something she folded carefully and put away before work because crying in service corridors wasted time. The night everything nearly ended, a wealthy guest's watch went missing. A Swiss watch, the kind men wore so other men could know they had one before speaking. The guest shouted. His assistant shouted louder. The floor manager, Mr. Huang, turned pale, then angry, then practical. He blamed ESI. "She cleaned the room," he said. ESI stood in the service corridor with her hands still smelling of disinfectant, her uniform damp at the collar from rushing between floors. "I did not take anything." Mr. Huang grabbed her wrist hard enough to hurt. "You people always say that." The words stunned her more than the grip. The guest's assistant sneered. "Call police. Check her locker." "My son is in the hospital," ESI said, voice shaking despite every effort to control it. "I cannot lose this job." Mr. Huang leaned close. "Then you should not steal from guests." "I did not." But innocence without power sounded like noise to people who had already chosen a convenient culprit. They dragged her toward security. Not violently enough to leave marks anyone important would care about. Just firmly enough to remind her that poverty had no witnesses. That was when Du Hwan Jae saw them. He had come to the hotel for a private negotiation with 2 Japanese shipping intermediaries and 1 Jeju councilman who owed him enough favors to sweat through silk. Hwan Jae was in his late 30s then, black suit, black coat, eyes so calm people often mistook him for patient. He stopped at the end of the corridor. What is happening? Mr. Huang immediately released ESI's wrist. Chairman Du. A staff theft issue. We are handling it. Hwan Jae looked at ESI. She lowered her eyes, humiliated by the speed with which fear made people polite to him. What was stolen? He asked. A guest's watch. From where?
Suite 1104.
When? This evening. Hwan Jae glanced at ESI's uniform badge. You clean that room? Yes, sir, she whispered. But I did not. He raised one hand. Not to silence her cruelly. To stop her from begging people who did not deserve the performance. Does she have a child in hospital? Hwan Jae asked. Mr. Huang blinked. That is irrelevant. It is a question. Yes, the manager said reluctantly. Her son is ill. Hwan Jae looked at the guest's assistant. If she stole a watch, why did she leave her sick child's hospital bill unpaid? The corridor went silent. The assistant's face twitched. Hwan Jae noticed. He always noticed the first person who became uncomfortable when logic entered a lie. Review the security footage, he said. Mr. Huang hesitated.
Now.
The footage took 11 minutes. In it, the guest's own assistant entered the suite after ESI left, removed the watch from the bedside drawer, placed it in his jacket, and later shouted loudly enough to make everyone look somewhere else. By the time the truth appeared, ESI's knees felt weak. Mr. Huang started apologizing to Hwan Jae. Not to her. That was when Hwan Jae turned his head slightly. Apologize to the woman whose wrist you grabbed. The manager's face burned. I apologize, Ms. Dengua. ESI could barely answer. The guest tried to smooth the matter over, but Hwan Jae was already bored with him. Remove them from my hotel network, he told the general manager. All properties. The guest sputtered. Hwan Jae did not stay to listen. He walked away, then paused and spoke to ESI without turning fully.
The boy.
Which hospital? She stiffened. I do not ask for charity. I did not offer charity. Then why? He looked back at her. Because a child should not die, because his mother was busy proving she was not a thief. The next morning, Kojo's surgery bill was paid.
No announcement. No ceremony.
No photograph of Hwan Jae standing beside a hospital bed like a politician harvesting gratitude. Only a receipt marked cleared and a social worker explaining that a private fund had taken care of the balance. Later, ESI received another note. A scholarship trust had been established for children of hospitality workers facing medical hardship. Kojo would be its first beneficiary. Hwan Jae saw her once more before leaving Jeju that week. She had waited near the service entrance, Kojo asleep in her arms after surgery, tiny chest rising and falling beneath a blue blanket. I do not know how to repay you, she said. Hwan Jae looked at the boy. Let him grow taller than what happened here. Then he left. Yes, I never forgot the sentence. Years passed. Kojo grew. Tall, bright, curious, always asking how systems worked. He became fascinated by hotel networks, access cards, booking software, security logs, and the invisible architecture that made luxury look effortless. ESI stayed in hospitality. She rose slowly from cleaner to supervisor, not because anyone gave her anything easily, but because she outworked condescension until even people who disliked her depended on her. Every year, on the anniversary of Kojo's surgery, she bought a small cake. Not always expensive, sometimes barely decorated. She and Kojo would light one candle and say the same thing. For the man who helped when no one was watching. Kojo grew up knowing Du Hwan Jae was not a saint. His mother never lied. Powerful men were complicated. Dangerous men could still do one beautiful thing. One act of kindness did not wash away every other act, but it could still save a child's life. That was why, when ESI saw the retirement gala booking at Seorim Grand Hotel and recognized the name, she asked whether staff could attend. The answer came back through banquet management. Private event, family, and invited guests only. So she worked her shift, pressed her uniform, bought a small bakery cake after lunch. made a card by hand because store-bought words felt too thin. And after the rich people failed to come, she walked into the ballroom with her son, not to repay a debt. Some debts became too large for repayment. She came because gratitude, if carried long enough, becomes a duty of love. Du Seongak had planned the empty ballroom with the patience of a man arranging a funeral while pretending to organize a party. He had inherited his uncle's cheekbones, his taste in tailoring, and none of his capacity for direct confrontation. Seongak preferred clean hands. Quiet sabotage. Doors closed before the victim reached them. Smiles delivered while the knife remained hidden in a sleeve. The retirement gala was never meant to honor Du Hwanjae. It was meant to bury him alive in public. For months, the board of Miruk Astor Group had been divided. Hwanjae was retiring from daily command, but he intended to remain chairman emeritus with veto influence over ports, hotels, private security, and overseas development. Many directors still feared him enough to accept that. Seongak needed them to stop fearing him. The paralysis had helped. People spoke differently around Hwanjae now.
Softer. Slower.
Sometimes louder, as if his legs had taken his hearing with them. Old allies who once waited outside his office began asking whether decisions should be routed through the next generation. But Hwanjae's mind remained sharp. Too sharp. So Seongak needed an image. One image. A ballroom prepared for 300 and attended by no one. A retirement gala without retirees, without allies, without gratitude. A man alone beneath chandeliers. The next morning, Seongak would show the board the photographs. He would say it gently. Chairman Du cannot even fill a room anymore. Then, more carefully, the market has noticed his isolation. Then with sorrow. We must protect the company from emotional decline. The work began 2 weeks before the gala. Confirmed guests received elegant cancellation notices from an account connected to the family office. Some were told the event had been postponed for health reasons. Politicians were warned that prosecutors might monitor attendees. Celebrities were told the family wanted privacy after recent medical complications. Executives were informed that attendants might appear to take sides during succession restructuring. Relatives received the simplest message. Chairman Du prefers a smaller farewell. No attendance required unless contacted directly. That one amused Seongak most. Hwanjae's family had always been good at accepting permission not to show loyalty. The hotel RSVP system was altered through a family-authorized event portal. Seongak did not do it himself. Men like him never touched keyboards when assistants could create distance. But the override was his. By 6:30 on gala night, he knew the room would remain empty. By 7, he began performing concern. By 8, he was enjoying the silence. Then Esi Dankwa walked in with a cake. That irritated him more than it should have. Not because she mattered. Because she disrupted the purity of the image. An empty ballroom was powerful. A ballroom with one sincere guest became something else. A question. Seongak watched her place the homemade card beside the retirement plaque, and for the first time that evening, his uncle's face changed. Not much, but enough. Hwanjae looked less like a defeated relic and more like a man remembering he still existed beyond the people who had abandoned him. That could not be allowed. Seongak stepped forward, smiling politely. Madam, your kindness is appreciated, but Chairman Du is tired. Staff should allow him privacy. Esi looked at his tuxedo, then at the hundreds of empty chairs. Privacy does not usually need this many plates. A few hotel employees lowered their faces. Kojo, standing beside his mother, hid a smile. Seongak's eyes moved to him. And you are? Kojo Dankwa. Hotel staff.
No.
Then this is inappropriate. Kojo's voice remained respectful. My mother came with a cake. I came with a gift. That is usually appropriate at a retirement. Seongak's smile thinned. Before he could respond, Hwanjae spoke. Let them stay. The words were quiet, but the room reacted. Hotel staff stopped clearing. The banquet director, Ma Yun-sil, froze near the far table with a stack of untouched dessert plates. Seongak turned. Uncle, you should rest. I said let them stay. This time, the old command returned. Not loud, not theatrical, but enough to remind every person in the ballroom that paralysis had not erased him. ESI gently opened the homemade card. The front was simple: cream paper, handwritten letters, a small pressed flower taped near the corner. Inside, in careful writing, were the words, "Thank you for helping my son grow taller." Then what happened there? Hwanje stared at the sentence. Memory returned fully. The service corridor, the accused cleaner, the hospital bill, the boy in the blanket. His own voice sang words he had forgotten, but she had carried for 22 years. He looked at Kojo. "You were the child."
Kojo bowed deeply.
"Yes, sir. My mother told me the truth when I was old enough to understand it." Hwanje swallowed once. The chandeliers blurred for a moment, and he hated that his eyes had become less obedient with age. Seongak saw the emotion and felt the night slipping. He needed the staff clearing again. The room empty again. His uncle isolated again. Instead, Hwanje looked toward Ma Yunsil. "Stop clearing." She blinked. "Chairman? There is still a guest." ESI shook her head gently. "Two, sir." Kojo lifted the small gift bag. Hwanje looked at them. Then at the hundreds of chairs prepared for powerful people who never came. His voice changed, barely. "Then serve dinner for two." A server near the wall began crying silently. Seongak saw it and understood the danger before anyone else. Empty chairs made a man look forgotten. But one loyal person could make the absence of everyone else look shameful. And shame, once pointed in the right direction, could become evidence. For 22 years, ESI Denkwa had imagined thinking do Hwanje properly. In her mind, she had always spoken beautifully. She had pictured herself standing tall, voice steady, words polished enough for a man whose signature had once saved her son's life. She would tell him how Kojo survived surgery, how he learned to run, how he grew taller every year until the hospital bed became a story instead of a sentence, how one quiet act of mercy had changed the shape of 2 lives. But now, standing inside a ballroom worth more than every apartment she had ever rented combined, ESI could barely speak. The room was too large, too empty, too cruel. Crystal chandeliers glittered over hundreds of untouched plates. White orchids leaned over abandoned chairs. A retirement stage waited for speeches that would never be given. The smell of expensive food hung in the air like an insult. And at the center of it all sat Du Hwanje, the man everyone had once feared to disappoint, alone in a black wheelchair with one hand resting on an unopened retirement plaque. He looked at the card ESI placed beside him as though it might break if he breathed too hard. Kojo stood beside her, holding the small gift bag with both hands. Hwanje looked from the card to the cake, then to Kojo. "You were the boy," he said again, softer this time. Kojo bowed. "Yes, Chairman Du." Hwanje's eyes moved over him carefully. The clean navy blazer, the composed posture, the young man's respectful smile. 22 years ago, Kojo had been a small child in a hospital bed with tubes taped to his skin, and a mother who had looked one bad day away from collapsing. Now he stood in front of Hwanje alive.
Tall, whole.
A strange pressure filled Hwanje's chest. He had lived a life filled with transactions. Money moved. Favors returned. Threats answered. Debt collected. Gratitude performed when useful and forgotten when power shifted. But this was not performance. A mother and son had walked into his abandoned gala with a cake small enough to be carried in one hand. And somehow it outweighed every empty chair in the room. Seongak stepped closer, his smile thin. "Uncle, this is touching, but we must be careful. Staff involvement in a private chairman-level event could create confusion." ESI turned to him. "I finished my shift. That is not the point." "No," she said gently. "I think that is exactly the point." Kojo lowered his eyes briefly, hiding another smile. Hwanje looked at Seongak. "Let her speak." The nephew's jaw tightened. ESI opened the card. Her hands trembled. Not from fear of Seongak. She had lived too long to be frightened by men who performed importance. Her hands trembled because the boy who survived was standing beside her, and the man who made that possible was sitting in a room built for applause and receiving none. "I made this myself," she said. "It is not elegant." Hwanje looked at the empty ballroom. Elegance has disappointed me tonight. A hotel server near the wall pressed her lips together to keep from reacting. ESI read from the card, though she knew every word. Chairman Du, 22 years ago, you stopped in a service corridor when everyone else had decided I was guilty because I was poor, foreign, and easy to blame. You asked one question. That question saved my job. Then you paid for my son's surgery without asking for praise. She paused. Kojo's hand touched her elbow lightly. She continued. You told me to let the boy grow taller. Then what happened there? He did.
Kojo bowed again, deeper this time.
Hwan Jae looked away. Not because he was unmoved. Because being seen in the one part of himself he had not built for fear made him feel suddenly defenseless. I did not remember the words, he said. I did, ESI replied. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the marble. Some people forget what they give because giving costs them little. Others remember because receiving kept them alive. Hwan Jae closed his eyes for one moment. Seon-gak's face hardened. The banquet director, Ma Yun-sil, still stood frozen near the dessert station. She had spent the first 2 hours calculating how to make the empty gala disappear without scandal. Now she felt something worse than scandal rising in the room. Witness. Hwan Jae opened his eyes. Ms. Denkwa. Yes, sir.
Seat.
ESI blinked. Chairman, I am still in uniform. Then the uniform has better manners than the tuxedos I invited. That time, several staff members failed to hide their reaction. Kojo pulled out a chair for his mother at the nearest table. ESI hesitated only a second before sitting. Kojo remained standing until Hwan Jae looked at him. You too. Yes, sir. A server hurried forward, then stopped, uncertain whether the evening had become dinner or ceremony. Hwan Jae noticed her confusion.
Serve them, he said.
The warmest food remaining. Not leftovers. Plates prepared properly. The server bowed quickly, eyes wet. Seon-gak leaned down toward Hwan Jae. Uncle, this will look strange. Hwan Jae did not look at him. It already looked strange when 300 people failed to arrive.
Seon-gak strugtenen.
The sentence had teeth. For the first time that night, the empty ballroom no longer seemed to belong to abandonment alone. It belonged to comparison. The powerful had stayed away. The grateful had come after work. ESI placed the small cake beside the retirement plaque. It is from the bakery behind the hotel, she said. Kojo said we should get a larger one, but I told him gratitude does not improve by weight. Kojo smiled. I still think the chocolate one looked better. It leaned. It had character. Hwan Jae surprised himself by laughing. Not loudly. Not easily. But truly. The sound moved through the ballroom like the first note after a funeral. Seon-gak heard it and understood he was losing control of the image. The old man in the wheelchair was supposed to look abandoned. Instead, he looked remembered. And that was much more dangerous. Kojo Denkwa had grown up trusting systems less than people thought he should. Machines did not lie on their own. People taught them where to hide the lie. While his mother sat with Chairman Du, Kojo noticed the check-in tablet lying on the banquet director's station near the ballroom entrance. The screen had gone dim, but not locked. A list of guest categories remained visible beneath the hotel's event management software. He did not touch it at first. He only looked. Confirmed guests, 312. Checked in, 0. Cancelled, 287. Pending, 25. The numbers did not fit the room. Kojo worked in digital security and hotel systems auditing. He knew the difference between a failed event and an event that had been emptied by design. People canceled gradually. They canceled with messy reasons, delayed replies, duplicated errors, and last-minute assistant calls. This cancellation pattern was too clean, too narrow, too disciplined. He looked toward Ma Yun-sil. The banquet director saw him reading the tablet and quickly stepped forward. Sir, please do not access hotel systems. Kojo lifted both hands slightly. I haven't touched it. Her face remained professional, but fear sat behind her eyes. He lowered his voice. Director Ma, did 300 guests really cancel? She glanced toward Seon-gak. That glance answered more than she meant it to. Kojo followed her eyes and saw the nephew speaking quietly into his phone near a marble column. Director Ma, Kojo said, still gentle. My mother came here to say thank you. I am not trying to create trouble. But that screen says this room was full before someone emptied it. Her lips parted, then closed. I cannot discuss client data. That is wise. But preserve it. She looked at him sharply. Why? Because if someone asks tomorrow why Chairman Du retired to an empty room, this system may be the only honest witness.
Mayansil swallowed.
She was not a villain. Kojo could see that. She was an employee inside a luxury machine, trained to smooth embarrassment before truth made guests uncomfortable. She had a mortgage, staff under her, a hotel reputation to protect, and powerful clients who could ruin careers by complaining to the right owner. But she also had eyes. She had watched an old man sit alone for 2 hours while plates cooled and flowers wilted. She had watched one housekeeper do what billionaires did not. Kojo said, "Did the cancellations come directly from guests?" Her voice lowered. Some came through the family portal. How many? I do not know exactly. You do. Her eyes flickered. He waited. Finally, she whispered, most. Was there an override? Mr. Dankwa. Kojo. Kojo, you should not involve yourself. My mother's involved because she walked into a room everyone else abandoned. His voice remained calm. If that abandonment was manufactured, I need to know before the man who saved my life believes the lie. Ma Yun-sil looked toward Hwan-jae. The chairman sat with ESI at the table, listening as she spoke. His face was still controlled, but something in him had returned from very far away. Ma made her decision quietly. There is an audit log, she said. If it is overwritten, it may be gone by morning. Can you export it? With authorization. Do you have it?
No.
Who does? She looked towards Seongak again. Kojo nodded once. That was enough. Unfortunately, Seongak had noticed them. He ended his call and approached with smooth irritation. Is there a problem? Kojo turned. No problem. Seongak glanced at the tablet. You seem very interested in hotel property. I am interested in empty chairs. The nephew smiled coldly. A poetic concern. Not really. More technical. Seongak's eyes narrowed. Kojo continued. When an event has 300 confirmed guests and nearly all cancellations appear within a short window through a family-authorized account, that is not poetry. That is a pattern. Ma Yun-sil went pale. Seongak looked at her. She lowered her eyes. Then he turned back to Kojo. You are making a serious accusation for a man who arrived carrying a gift bag. Kojo lifted the bag slightly. My mother came with cake. You came with empty chairs. The line struck the air cleanly. A few staff members looked down, hiding their faces. Seongak stepped closer. Be careful. Kojo did not step back. I am. Hwan-jae's voice came from behind them. Careful about what? Seongak turned quickly. Nothing, uncle. This young man is confused by event procedures. Hwan-jae rolled his wheelchair closer, silent, over the marble. For years, he had entered rooms like weather. Now the chair made him quieter, but not smaller. Not in that moment. He looked at Kojo. What did you find? Kojo hesitated. Not because he feared Seongak. Because he respected the weight of what he was about to say. Chairman Du, I do not think your guests abandoned you naturally. The ballroom seemed to still again. Hwan-jae's expression did not change, but his eyes sharpened. Explain. Kojo pointed toward the tablet without touching it. The RSVP system shows over 300 confirmations. Almost all cancellations appear processed through a narrow time window. Director Ma says many came through the family portal. That suggests someone with authorized access may have sent cancellation notices or altered the attendance record.
Seongak laughed softly.
This is absurd. The son of a hotel housekeeper is now investigating family affairs. ESI stood. Slowly. Not angry. Dignified. My son is alive because Chairman Du asked the right question when others wanted the easy lie. She looked directly at Seongak. It seems he learned from him. Hwan-jae remained focused on Kojo. Can you prove it? Kojo looked at the tablet. If the logs are still breathing, yes. For the first time that night, Seongak's face changed. Not much, but enough. Huan Jie saw it. The same way he had once seen a thief become uncomfortable in a service corridor 22 years before. Old instincts returned. He turned to Ma Yunsil. Preserve the logs. She straightened. Yes, Chairman. Gak said sharply. The hotel cannot release private family system data without approval. Huan Jie looked at him. Then approve it. I think we should discuss.
Now.
The old command landed. Gak's mouth tightened, but the room was watching. Staff. Musicians.
S.
Kojo.
Ma Yunsil.
The empty chairs themselves seemed to wait. He could not refuse without revealing too much. Fine, he said. Kojo watched him carefully. The gala had begun as a humiliation. Now it had become a crime scene with chandeliers. The first export took 8 minutes. During those 8 minutes, Du Xiangak tried to smile like a man with nothing to hide. He failed. Ma Yunsil led Kojo to a side office behind the ballroom, where event tablets, guest lists, floor plans, and banquet schedules were managed. Huan Jie came with them. So did Xiangak, though no one had invited him. Esi followed quietly, unwilling to leave her son alone inside a family matter that had already grown teeth. The room was small compared to the ballroom. Fluorescent light replaced chandeliers. Stainless counters replaced gold decor. Here, luxury was assembled before being carried out to people who pretended it appeared by magic. Kojo sat at the workstation while Ma logged in. I will not alter anything, he said. Only view and export.
Ma nodded.
I understand. Xiangak folded his arms. This is unnecessary theater. Huan Jie looked at the screen. Theater was the empty ballroom. The nephew went silent. Kojo opened the event audit log. Rows of activity filled the screen. Guest confirmations. Meal preferences. Security tags. VIP access notes. Then, at 2:14 the previous night, the pattern began. Mass cancellation notice generated. Template attached. Recipient group. Confirmed guests. Sender authorization. Family office portal, DSG. Kojo paused.
Ma inhaled sharply.
Huan Jie read the initials.
Du Xiangak.
Xiangak stepped forward. That could be an administrative marker. Kojo clicked into the activity. The message opened. Due to Chairman Du Huan Jie's declining health and private family preference, the retirement gala has been postponed indefinitely. Attendance is no longer required. Please refrain from public comment out of respect for the family. Huan Jie did not move. For 5 years, he had endured people confusing paralysis with decline. Now his own nephew had used the word like a knife wrapped in etiquette. Kojo continued. At 2:19, a second message had gone to political guests. Please be advised that the event may draw investigative attention. Discretion is recommended. At 2:23, celebrities and media-facing guests received. Family requests privacy. Attendance may be inappropriate during health-related transition. At 2:31, internal family contacts received. Chairman prefers a smaller farewell. No attendance required unless contacted directly. The room seemed to shrink with each message. Ma exported the logs to a secured hotel archive. Kojo requested hash verification and a read-only copy. She complied. Xiangak's voice cooled. Even if some messaging was mishandled, the result was not false. Nobody questioned it because they already believed it. That is what you refuse to see, uncle. Huan Jie turned his wheelchair slowly. Xiangak's mask cracked wider now, revealing the contempt beneath the polish. The world has changed. You are not the man who walked into rooms and made ministers sweat. You are a symbol people feel awkward around. Fear built your empire. Pity will not preserve it. Yesai's face tightened. Kojo stared at Xiangak with open disgust. Huan Jie remained very still. The insult landed, but not where Xiangak intended. 5 years ago, those words might have cut into the wound of his paralysis. Tonight, after the empty room, after Yesai's card, after Kojo's discovery, they revealed something cleaner. Xiangak had not only sabotaged the gala. He had despised the man he was pretending to honor. Huan Jie's voice was quiet. Then you understand neither fear nor loyalty. Xiangak laughed once. Loyalty? Look at the ballroom. One housekeeper came. One person came without being managed. One person cannot save your legacy. No, Huan Jie said. But one person exposed yours. Xiangak's eyes hardened. He reached for his phone. Kojo spoke immediately. Do not let him access that. Xiangak snapped. Who are you to give orders? The child your uncle saved, Kojo said. Which already makes me more honest in this room than you. Ma Yunsil moved first. She stepped toward the door and signaled hotel security. Xiangak turned on her. Director Ma, remember who pays for this event? She surprised herself by answering. Apparently, the event paid for a lie. Security arrived. Huan Jie did not raise his voice. Mr. Du Xiangak is not to access hotel systems, event devices, or staff terminals. Preserve all logs. Notify legal. And escort him back to the ballroom where he can sit in the room he emptied. Xiangak's face flushed. You cannot humiliate me in front of staff. Huan Jie looked at his nephew with something colder than anger. You use staff to humiliate me in front of ghosts. For a moment, no one moved. Then security stepped closer. Xiangak did not fight. Men like him rarely did when witnesses were present. He adjusted his jacket, lifted his chin, and walked out with enough dignity to fool only people who had not seen the logs. When he was gone, Huan Jie looked at the screen one last time. 312 confirmed guests. 287 cancellations manufactured. A press leak file attached to the event folder. Kojo opened it. The headline was already written. Du Huanjie retires to empty room as allies abandon paralyzed chairman. Ma Yunsil covered her mouth. ESI closed her eyes. Huan Jie stared at the headline for a long time. Then he laughed once.
Dry.
Quiet. Almost astonished. I believed it, he said. No one answered. His hand rested on the wheelchair armrest. I sat in that ballroom and believed every empty chair. ESI stepped closer. Chairman Du. He looked at her. She spoke gently, but not with pity. Loneliness makes lies easier to recognize as truth when they sound like what we already fear. Huan Jie held her gaze. That sentence reached him more deeply than any apology could have. He looked back toward the ballroom, where hundreds of chairs waited under chandeliers for people who had been turned away by fraud. The gala was not empty because I was forgotten, he said. Kojo nodded. It was emptied because someone needed you to feel forgotten. Huan Jie's jaw tightened. The pain did not vanish, but its shape changed. Abandonment became evidence. Humiliation became motive. And the paralyzed billionaire who had entered the evening as a man quietly mourning his own irrelevance now understood that someone had staged his loneliness like a murder scene. He turned his wheelchair toward the ballroom doors. Then we should not waste the room. ESI looked at him. What do you mean? He looked at the cake in her hands, then at Kojo, then at the preserved logs. His eyes sharpened with something old and alive. If the people invited for power did not come, he said, we will invite the people who remember. ESI Dankwa did not own a guest list. She owned memory that turned out to be more powerful. Inside the side office, Du Huanjie's final sentence lingered in the air. If the people invited for power did not come, we will invite the people who remember. Kojo looked at his mother. ESI understood immediately. For years, she had kept a small notebook in her apartment drawer. Not for gossip, not for debt, for gratitude. Names of people connected to the quiet fund Huan Jie had created after saving Kojo's life. Hospitality workers, hospital families, former drivers, port widows, kitchen staff, bellmen, laundry women, security guards, people who had never sat at billionaire tables but whose lives had been quietly redirected by a man too complicated to call good and too human to call only cruel. She had never expected to use the notebook for this. But then again, she had never expected to find him sitting alone beneath chandeliers while his own family tried to turn loneliness into evidence. ESI took out her phone. I can call some people. Huan Jie looked at her. At this hour? She gave him a small smile. People who remember do not need embossed invitations. Kojo began helping immediately. He drafted a short message while Ma Yunsil preserved the RSVP logs. Chairman Du's retirement gala is still open. If his quiet help ever reached your family, and you wish to say thank you, come to CORM Grand tonight. No formal dress required.
Just come as you are.
ESI sent it to 12 people. Those 12 sent it to others. Within 20 minutes, the first reply arrived. We are coming. Then another. My father can walk slowly, but he wants to bow. Then another. My daughter is bringing flowers. In the ballroom, Hwanje waited. Not with the old impatience of a man expecting obedience, with something stranger, uncertainty. He had known how to wait for enemies, police raids, negotiations, board votes, and surgery reports. He did not know how to wait for gratitude. Seung-gak sat at a far table under quiet hotel security watch, face stiff with fury. He had expected the ballroom to remain a graveyard of empty chairs. Instead, the doors opened again. A retired bellman entered first. He walked with a cane, wearing a brown suit too large in the shoulders. Beside him came a woman in a doctor's coat, still carrying her hospital bag. The bellman bowed deeply. Chairman Du, he said, my daughter became a surgeon because your fund paid the tuition when my wife died. The young doctor bowed too, eyes wet. Then came a widow with 2 grown sons. Then a florist holding a bundle of imperfect street flowers. Then a former kitchen porter. Then a dock worker with a scarred hand. Then a woman pushing her elderly father in a wheelchair less elegant than Hwanje's, but polished with care. They did not arrive like elites. They arrived like weather finally changing. Some wore uniforms. Some wore church clothes. Some came in work boots. Some carried children half asleep against their shoulders. Some brought letters, envelopes, small cakes, fruit baskets, handmade scarves, old photographs, hospital bracelets, school certificates. The ballroom did not fill with power. It filled with proof. Hwanje watched them come, one after another, and the room that had humiliated him began turning against the humiliation itself. ESI stood near him, hands folded. A woman with silver hair approached and held out a faded receipt. You paid for my husband's surgery after the dock accident, she said. He lived 12 more years. He met 3 grandchildren. A man in a delivery jacket bowed. Your lawyer stopped my deportation case. I was not important enough to thank you then. A florist placed flowers beside the retirement plaque. You loaned me money after the typhoon destroyed my shop, she whispered. You never asked for it back. Hwanje looked at the growing crowd. For most of his life, he had counted powerful men. He knew which assemblyman owed him, which banker feared him, which executive lied badly, which prosecutor could be bought, and which could only be threatened. But these people had been counting him in a different ledger. Not favors. Not leverage.
Moments.
ESI leaned close and said softly, You helped more people than your enemies remembered. Hwanje's voice was rough. I spent my life counting powerful men. I did not know the quiet ones were counting me. Across the room, Seung-gak looked at the arriving families with open disgust. He did not understand. That was why he had already lost. By 10 o'clock, the CORM Grand Ballroom was no longer empty. It was not filled the way Seung-gak had promised the press it would be. No celebrities posed near the floral wall. No assemblyman smiled for cameras. No billionaire wives compared jewels beneath chandeliers. Instead, children sat in silk-covered chairs swinging their feet above marble floors. Retired drivers ate 5-star dinners beside former laundry workers. Hotel staff served people who had never been invited to rooms like this unless they were carrying trays. The musicians began playing again, softer this time, as if they finally understood the event. Ma Yun-sil ordered the kitchen to stop treating the food as waste. Serve everything properly, she told the staff. Tonight, the guests have arrived. At the center table, Kojo handed Hwanje the small gift bag. Hwanje opened it carefully. Inside was a framed hospital bracelet from Kojo's childhood surgery, preserved behind glass. Beneath it was a handwritten note. Because of you, I grew taller than what happened there. Hwanje stared at it for a long time. Then he looked at Kojo. You kept this. My mother did, Kojo said. I used to think it was strange. Then I understood it was the receipt for my future. Hwanje's hand trembled slightly as he closed the frame against his chest. For once, he did not try to hide it. A little later, Ma Yun-sil approached the microphone. Her voice shook at first. Ladies and gentlemen, Chairman Du will speak. No PR team had prepared this version. The speech written for the original gala sat untouched in a folder near the stage. It was full of polished lies about leadership, gratitude, continued influence, and future partnership. Huan Jie did not ask for it. Kojo helped position the microphone lower. ESI stood nearby, not on stage, but close enough that Huan Jie could see the homemade card resting beside the retirement plaque. He looked across the ballroom, at the ordinary people, at the empty seats now occupied by memory, at his nephew sitting stiffly beneath security watch. Then he spoke. I prepared for a different night. The room quieted. I expected men with titles, women with cameras, politicians with careful smiles, executives who owed me enough to clap even if they did not mean it. A faint sadness moved through his mouth. They did not come. At first, I believed that meant I had become nothing. Nobody moved. I was wrong. His fingers rested on the armrest of his wheelchair. I have done many things in my life for power. Some I can defend. Some I will not insult you by pretending we're noble. I confused fear with respect for too long. I allowed silence to look like loyalty. I thought the people standing nearest my shadow were the people who knew me best.
His eyes moved to ESI.
Then one woman came after finishing her shift, carrying a small cake and a handmade card. ESI lowered her gaze, emotional but steady. She reminded me of a part of my name I had almost forgotten. Not the part that frightened men. Not the part that opened locked rooms. The part that stopped in a service corridor when no camera was present. The ballroom was utterly still. If any part of my name deserves to live after tonight, Huan Jie said, let it be that part. A server began crying openly now. No one mocked her for it. Huan Jie looked across the room. To those who came because something I did once reached your life, I will not call myself good because you remember one good thing. But I will say this. You have given an old man a better retirement than the powerful people he was foolish enough to expect. Then he lifted the homemade card slightly. This weighs more than the plaque. The applause began quietly, then grew. Not polite applause. Not purchased applause. The kind that came from people standing because something in them had been seen. Seengak remained seated. This time, nobody cared. The next morning, Seengak arrived at Miruk Aster Group's emergency board meeting with his speech already sharpened. He intended to describe instability, isolation, emotional decline. A humiliating retirement gala rescued by hotel staff and strangers. He expected discomfort to do half his work. Instead, he entered a room that already knew. The transformed gala video had spread privately overnight, not through tabloids, through investors, hotel partners, retired employees, and directors whose assistants had received both the false cancellation and the corrected truth. By the time Huan Jie entered in his wheelchair, the room stood. Not out of fear. Not entirely. That unsettled Seengak.
Vanjai Voria Charcoal Suti. No Tuxedo, no cerimonial PIN.
ESI was not there. She had refused to become decorative evidence. Kojo sat near Ma Yunsil as a technical consultant, a laptop open before him. Seengak began anyway. Yesterday's event proves exactly why succession must be clarified. Chairman Du's reputation has become vulnerable. The room was empty until outsiders were invited to create sentiment. Kojo looked up. Correction. The room was emptied. A screen lit behind him. The RSVP logs appeared. Kojo walked the board through everything with clean precision. Original confirmations. Mass cancellation notices. Family portal override. False health decline language. Political warning messages. Press leak draft.
Zenda Autorización. Do Seengak.
Ma Yunsil then gave her statement. I preserved the logs myself. The cancellations were not normal guest behavior. They were processed through an authorized family account connected to Mr. Du Seengak's office. Seengak's face tightened. These are technical misunderstandings. Huan Jie looked at him.
No.
This is what you are when the room has evidence. Silence cut through the boardroom. Seengak tried to recover. Uncle, you are allowing emotion to cloud corporate judgment. Huan Jie's expression remained calm. For years, I allowed blood to cloud it. That ends today. He placed a folder on the table. I am retiring from operational influence on my own terms. Not because you staged an empty room. Not because my legs no longer move. Not because allies failed to arrive. I retire because the part of my legacy worth preserving requires different hands than mine. Several directors leaned forward. Huan Jie continued. Du Xiangak is removed from succession consideration and suspended from all executive authority pending investigation into data manipulation, reputational sabotage, and misuse of family office systems.
Seon got stort.
You cannot. I can. The old tone returned. No volume. Only finality. Huan Jie opened the second folder. I am establishing the Quiet Table Trust, a permanent fund for workers, widows, injured staff, immigrant families, low-wage employees, and children whose lives are damaged by industries my empire profited from. Kojo looked down, moved despite himself. The trust will be independently governed. Ma Yunsil will serve as hospitality workers' representative. Kojo Dankwa will advise on digital oversight for transparency. No family member will control disbursement. A director asked carefully, and Ms. Dankwa? Huan Jie's eyes softened faintly. She refused a title. Across the room, Kojo smiled. He already knew his mother's words. Huan Jie repeated them. She said, I did not come for a chair. I came because there should have been at least one. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the board secretary placed the retirement documents before Huan Jie. This time, he signed without the loneliness of the night before. Not defeated, not discarded, not retired by humiliation. He signed like a man choosing which part of himself deserved to remain. Xiangak was escorted out before noon. By evening, the press leak he planned had been replaced by another story. Paralyzed chairman's empty gala transformed by workers he quietly helped. Huan Jie did not read the full article. He had learned, finally, that the people who mattered did not always arrive through headlines. Sometimes they came after work, carrying cake. 3 months later, Du Huan Jie held another retirement gathering. This one was smaller.
No chandeliers. No Goldrimed-Platz.
No politicians pretending their schedules had suddenly cleared. The gathering took place in a coastal garden behind a restored Jeju guest house overlooking the sea. Wooden tables stood beneath string lights. Children ran between chairs. Former drivers, nurses, cooks, dock workers, hotel staff, scholarship families, and old employees filled the garden with a kind of noise expensive rooms rarely allowed. Huan Jie remained in his wheelchair. Nothing miraculous had happened to his body. He did not stand. He did not need to. His power that day was not in rising. It was in being seen without performance. ESI arrived wearing a simple, elegant dress in warm brown, her curls pinned softly away from her face. Kojo came beside her carrying another cake. This one is professional, he announced. ESI gave him a look. The first one was professional enough. It leaned, Ma. It had personality. Huan Jie laughed. A real laugh. The kind that changed his face completely. Kojo placed the cake on the table, then bowed with exaggerated ceremony. For your second retirement, Chairman Du. Second. The first one was interrupted by fraud, emotional restoration, and my mother's cake. An efficient summary. ESI smiled and sat beside Huan Jie near the edge of the garden, where the sea wind moved gently through the flowers. For a while, they watched the children play. Then ESI said, You gave my son a future when I had nothing to offer you back. Huan Jie looked at Kojo, who was helping a group of children fix a small lantern near the path. You came when everyone who owed me more stayed away, he said. That is more than repayment. She shook her head softly. I came because gratitude should not be embarrassed by simple clothes. No, Huan Jie said. It should not. Later, Ma Yunsil brought him a photograph from the first gala. The ballroom before ESI arrived. Hundreds of empty chairs. Untouched plates. A stage waiting for applause. Huan Jie studied it. There was pain in the image still, but it no longer owned him. He placed it beside a new photograph taken that afternoon. Children laughing in the garden, ESI cutting cake, Kojo holding up a crooked lantern, Ma Yunsil smiling with hotel staff, and Huan Jie in his wheelchair at the center, not alone, not pitted, not abandoned. He looked at the two pictures for a long time. Then he said quietly, "I thought the empty chairs meant I had no one." ESI looked at him. "I was wrong," he continued. "They were only seats reserved for people who never mattered." The sea wind moved across the garden. Someone called for cake. Kojo shouted that everyone should witness the cake was level this time. ESI told him to stop insulting family history. Hwanje laughed again, softer now. He had lived long enough to learn that a full ballroom could still be empty. And one loyal guest could make an empty room feel witnessed. Nobody came for the Paralyzed Billionaire's retirement. Until one single mother walked in with a homemade card and proved that loyalty did not need a full ballroom to be